Firestorm's launched the Chapter 3 to 5 roadmap and an upcoming leaked competitive mode for Battlefield 5. This is your week on the battlefield. Hello and welcome to this episode of This Week on the Battlefield, the show where we cover news, updates, the community, and so much more all around the Battlefield franchise. In this episode then, we have plenty to talk about surrounding the roadmap released for the upcoming content for Battlefield 5, with most of the details provided so far pertaining to Chapter 3 Trial by Fire. We have some interesting details on what is supposedly to be a relatively competitive 5v5 game mode coming in Chapter 4. The Firestorm launch is of course upon us, and with it the associated patch bringing some major changes to vehicle behavior. In addition then, we have some community news surrounding the premium versus live service debate and the return of the Dev Talk series, as well as of course, to round everything off, some brilliant only in Battlefield moments for you guys to enjoy. In terms of the big ticket news items this week, there really was two. The roadmap update giving us information on what to expect from Chapter 3, 4, and 5 in the upcoming months for Battlefield 5, and of course, the Firestorm release trailer and all the information and blog posts that went alongside it. Starting off with the roadmap, however, in terms of what to expect from Chapter 3 Trial by Fire, besides of course the obvious Firestorm. In April, we should be getting a new Conquest variation called Grind, a smaller, faster paced variant of the usual Conquest game mode we all love and enjoy. This to me sounds pretty much what you would expect from the usual Conquest small game mode that most past Battlefield games had at launch or had added at a later date. In May, we can expect 2 new missions for combined arms, as well as some matchmaking and a hardcore mode for it. We're also going to be gaining a variation of Breakthrough called Fortress, which supposedly is siege warfare in a single sector. I can't wait to get a little bit more details on that specifically, as I am a fan of the Breakthrough game mode. Also, in terms of what to expect in May is the addition of a new location with the Greece Mercury map being added. June then brings us a new game mode called Outposts, where supposedly we are to secure and build objectives to ensure your team assembles enough soldiers to endure the lengthy fight. No details yet exactly on what that is supposedly to entail. In terms of new weapons, only 3 have been announced so far. That doesn't mean that more won't follow, with the Commando Carbine finally bringing some new fresh air to the medic class of weaponry, the Lahiti Solaranto M26, a support LMG coming to the support class, and the Tromboncino M28 for the medic class, also bringing us a new addition there. In terms of Chapter 4 and 5, less is known about the content. Chapter 4, Defying the Odds, is going to be available from June, will bring us at least 2 new maps, with the second Greece map, Marcia, being available, as well as a unnamed urban combat map. We'll also be getting a new game mode, the aforementioned 5v5, with some exclusively designed maps for that game mode. Actually, according to some of the news reports, at least 2 maps have been made exclusively for that game mode, as well as of course some others have been converted. We'll jump into a few more details on that game mode just a little bit later down on in this video. In terms of Chapter 5, all we know so far is that it's called Awakening the Giant. We should be seeing the introduction of a new faction, one or multiple, and from the art used in the original post, it seems like this should be the Americans and the Japanese, although chronologically what would make more sense of course would be the introduction of the Eastern Front with the Germans fighting the Russians. In terms of that 5v5 competitive game mode then, according to some data mining and information posted on Reddit, quite credible but not certain, this seems to be actually quite a competitive and complex design. It's going to include various different functionalities, features that aren't available in the base game, and should actually make, like Firestorm, quite a difference to the Battlefield 5 experience. Amongst the details that were noteworthy in my opinion, it should include so-called doctrines. Think of these as dedications for teams, providing certain buffs to the teams when they're going up against their enemies. There's going to be 5 classes to choose from: Captain, Assault, Medic, Support, and Recon, with each of those classes however having subclasses. For example, Captain comes with the choice of Raid Captain or Control Captain, the Assault comes in with Range Assault, Saboteur, and Shock Assault, and so further on for the remaining classes as well. Each of these classes then have special traits, special equipment. At this point, sounds very much like the competitive mode that of course we saw tried out in Battlefield 1. In addition then, there's going to be vehicles, 1 per team. So far, supposedly only the Panzer 38T and Panzer IV for the German side and Staghound and Valentine for the British side will actually be available. However, with specific variants of each of those available and determined by whatever doctrine your team then chooses. Already now, this seems like a pretty complex game mode. In terms of maps then, we should be getting a map set in the Provence in France, one in Norway, one in Libya, a Casquettes map, and one set in Rotterdam. Of course, the Casquettes and Provence map being those specifically designed for this game mode maps, not available elsewhere. In terms of game modes for this 5v5 mode, supposedly there is actually 4 sub-game modes: Extraction, Breakthrough, King of the Hill, and Holdout. This of course all sounding very much like a competitive mode, something you would expect from CSGO or, for example, Rainbow Six Siege. But leaving future content to one side, what about the content launching next week? Well, Firestorm, of course, is coming out on Monday, March the 25th, and is going to be free to play for everybody who owns Battlefield 5, but not available to anybody else who doesn't. There's going to be a team dedicated to Firestorm, so we can expect some updates and changes over time. How large that team is, what kind of resources they have available, and if there's really going to be regular, substantial content updates, sadly remains to be seen and is not really known at this point. However, another little piece of interesting information surrounding Firestorm that we got this week is that supposedly the Duos mode launching in April is actually only going to be a time-limited event, which seems absolutely silly, and I'm pretty sure the entire community is hoping that they can reverse that decision somewhere down the line. If you want more details on everything we know about Firestorm, that's a video in itself, and I've actually made it, so I'll link it down below in the description and of course up in the info card if you want a little bit more information on everything Firestorm before it launches this coming Monday. In the last ticket on the news items for this week's video then, we have the update this week. And while I'm not going to cover every single detail because the patch notes are quite lengthy, I'm going to give you a rough overview of what has changed. There's been some major changes to vehicles, specifically actually the behavior of planes, with tweaked maneuverability and tweaked ideal roll pitches, turn pitches, quite a few changes done there. If you want the full details, I really do recommend you read the patch notes. I'll have those linked down below in the description. There's also been some tweaks to the balance of both airplanes and tanks as well, damage changes, little bug fixes here and there to make things work a little bit smoother. In terms of infantry gadget, notable changes there. We have the AP mines, thankfully no longer being one-hit kills on infantry. A couple of changes to infantry weapon balance to mention as well. Slight reductions in the horizontal recoil for the FG42, so a buff for that beautiful weapon. And the semi-autos should have, across the board that is, more noticeable recoil now on a per shot basis. Another small change, but definitely worth mentioning, is that you can now just press a button or hold for revive, so that you don't have to basically sit here holding down your trigger button to wait for your revive for a solid 3 minutes every game, because let's be honest, nobody revives anybody. And in terms of maps, finally, Hamada is now a normal Conquest map, with Conquest Assault being banished exclusively to Grand Operations. So now we only have to leave the server on Hamada when Frontlines comes up and Grand Operations, but no longer at least for Conquest and Breakthrough, thankfully. In terms of community news then, the live service versus premium debate is once more being hotly debated. Of course, mainly thanks to the fact that for most people out there, the roadmap presented by DICE, with only 3 maps, at least so far, being fully confirmed over what is essentially the next half year, being, well, less than satisfactory to some of us who are expecting more of the kind of content quantity we could expect from a premium model, just with the live service model making it available to everybody. Now, wherever you fall on this debate is of course up to you. I, for my part, think that just because DICE fails to implement the kind and quantity of content that the community expects, doesn't mean that the actual entire model is flawed. There was good reasons why we didn't want the premium model to continue, around of course splitting the community base, and of course the dead game modes that resulted as a consequence of it. But I would agree with most people right now that the current execution on DICE's part in terms of quantity of content isn't exactly up to snuffs in most departments. Also, in terms of community news, we got the Dev Talks returning this week. However, I had a little bit of trouble actually finding the Dev Talk episode, seemingly only getting posted on Twitter by the official Battlefield account. If you want to watch it, I'll have it linked down below in the description. It's quite a short affair, really not much interesting information in there, just a little bit of behind the scenes of Firestorm and a little bit of a video from Criterion Games explaining how they're so excited for us to all play Firestorm. As said, link down below in the description. But on to our only in Battlefield moments, of course. And for our first clip in this week's episode, we have Navigator, who's found a teammate that specializes in taking out anti-tank mines. Our second clip this week is provided by Wunder Wesley, a true Battlefield classic, Jeep stuff on a Jeep. And lastly then, we have a solo vehicle flanked by Raven XL, getting the rogue kill, getting out his machine gun, taking out a couple of infantry, and finishing off by taking out the AA tank. True on the objective play, absolutely love it. But coming to the end of this week's episode then, if you enjoyed the show, found it interesting or entertaining, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, and of course hit me up with your feedback, suggestions, and opinions down below in the comments or over on Twitter. With that being said, however, I'd like to thank you very much for watching, and hope to see you in the next episode of This Week on the Battlefield.